The story starts with Elizabeth Sparkle, a TV star who rises to fame, and after decades, her spotlight slowly dies down. On her 50th birthday, after wrapping up a TV workout commercial,
Hang in there, ladies, you got it! Kick! Push! Kick! Come on, you got it!
Elizabeth goes to use the restroom, but upon seeing that the women's room is under repair, she goes to the men's restroom. There, she hides in a stall as she notices someone coming. Harvey, however, who is on the phone, cruelly suggests that Elizabeth is too old for her role and should be dismissed. After he leaves the restroom,
when was that? Back in the 30s? What? For King Kong? We need her young. We need her hot. We need her now.
Elizabeth feels distraught and meets with him later to discuss why she's being dismissed. Over lunch, Harvey beats around the bush and doesn't give the exact reason why he's terminating her contract, and he leaves her to hang out with another executive. Later on her way home, Elizabeth sees her poster being taken down from the billboard and loses sight of her surroundings, causing her to run into traffic and crash her car. Luckily, she survives the terrible accident and has no sign of internal bleeding. At the hospital, the doctor wishes Elizabeth a happy birthday, but she cries, so he takes his leave to attend to other patients. Left alone with the nurse, he examines her, and she notices a patch on the back of his hand. He calls her a perfect subject before covertly handing her a flash drive.
Is there a problem?
No, it's perfect.
As soon as she is discharged, she walks home and then notices the mysterious flash drive labeled "The Substance," wrapped in a paper that has a phone number. Suddenly, she runs into Fred, her old high school classmate, who clearly still has feelings for her and wants to catch up with her sometime later. He writes his number on a piece of paper that falls into a pool of mud, but he still gives it to her before leaving.
Maybe for a drink sometime, now that we're, reconnected. I followed your career. What a success.
When she gets home, she plugs the flash drive into her TV, and it starts playing, informing her of a syringe shot that can make a younger and better version of herself. The video explains that she gets to share consciousness with the better version, and must return to her old self weekly. After watching the video, she dumps the flash drive, and later goes to a bar and drinks multiple cocktails. As a result, she gets drunk and heads back home. Later that night, Elizabeth goes through the list of her trophies and tosses one of them at her frame due to frustration. She then retrieves her flash drive and calls the number on it, asking for a sample, so the voice behind the phone tells her an address before abruptly ending the call. The following morning, Elizabeth takes a shower, and as she reads through the paper, she learns of an audition being carried out to replace her, so she goes through other papers in her mail and sees the card with the number 503. Quickly, she heads to the address given to her that same night and arrives at a shady basement. She places the card on the scanner and the door opens up halfway. And after trying multiple times, she crawls into the building where she comes across a white room with multiple closets. After scanning the closets, she sees her number 503 and uses her card on it. It opens and she sees her package, so she takes it home. At her place, she opens the package and sees multiple labels with needles, valves, tubes, and instructions. After reading the instructions, she goes to her bathroom and draws a serum from the activator before injecting it into herself. Moments later, she loses her balance, convulses, and falls to the ground. Then another version, a younger and glamorous version named Sue, emerges from her spinal slit. Once she checks her body out, Sue stitches back the open spine of Elizabeth and then injects her with a supplement needed to last her for the week. The next day, after having her shower, Sue's ears ring and blood drips out of her nose. She immediately checks the package for an empty stabilizer and takes a large syringe to extract spinal fluid from Elizabeth's spine before injecting it into her leg. Immediately, the ringing noise stops, so she checks the paper for the audition and heads towards her former company. On her way, she sees a revealing outfit and purchases it for the event. She introduces herself as Sue to the judges, and based on her looks and performance, Harvey immediately hires her. He praises her, but she informs him of her scheduling problems, which involve leaving town once in a while to take care of her sick mother. To her surprise, he agrees with her and calls her a gorgeous lady with a pure heart that fans are going to love. Days later, she rises to power and has completely taken over Elizabeth's role. On the night of the 7th day, she switches back to her old self with a syringe connected to their bodies. Immediately, Elizabeth regains consciousness. She goes through a series of pain, especially from her torn and mended spine slit. Later, she struggles to walk around the house and finally maintains her balance. Elizabeth then heads to her former workplace and sees Harvey, who hands her her stuff with a wrapped book he recommends for her to try in her free time. When she gets home, she schedules the calendar, indicating when it's Sue's turn to be up and about. She then sits and watches TV all day. The following day, she receives mail from the substance, informing her that her refill kit has arrived, so she goes to the venue to retrieve it. On the 7th day, she switches back to Sue, and Sue goes around her house looking for a space. She finds one in her bathroom, and makes a door to store Elizabeth and her properties. While completing the work, her neighbor Oliver complains due to the loud noises, but once he sees her, he changes his mind. She then informs him that Elizabeth has moved out, and she's the new neighbor. Completely stricken by her beauty, Oliver offers to help her with his big hammer. She returns to her place and drags Elizabeth and her pictures into the hidden room. Sue pushes the show from a campy fitness to a hyper-sexualized spectacle. Her way of life is fast and glamorous, and at one point, she goes for an outing neglecting the rule to switch. She takes a man to her apartment, and as she prepares to get down with it, Elizabeth runs out of food supplement, indicating it's time for them to switch. So Sue's ears ring, and blood pours out of her nose. She quickly rushes to her bathroom, and despite knowing the rules, which are for her to switch every 7 days without exception, Sue disobeys them and takes a shot of stabilizer from Elizabeth's spine. She then returns to the living room and continues her nookie time with Troy. The next day, Elizabeth wakes up and sees the mess Sue made in the living room. She sees a note on the glass wall from Troy, and when she tries to reach it, she notices her right index finger has become crooked like a cartoon witch's. So she runs into the bathroom and tries to wash it off, but nothing happens. That's when she sees the stabilizer Sue used on her, so she calls to report the incident to the substance manufacturer, asking if there's a way to reverse the situation, but he tells her it's not possible. She tries to convince him that Sue was the one who made the choice, but he disagrees, reminding her that they are one, and since she's the host, it was her decision. Frustrated, Elizabeth cleans the messy house, and as she vacuums, Sue's video airs on TV, and she gets jealous after watching it. Suddenly, Oliver rings her doorbell after seeing Sue on TV and asks her to come over to his place to have a drink later that night. Days later, Elizabeth goes to retrieve her refill kit, but on getting there, she hears a voice calling for Sue, so she runs out with her kit and goes to a nearby restaurant. Nervously, she replies to the waitress, demanding a mocha latte. After the waitress leaves to get her order, a crooked man speaks to her, trying to relate to her about how long 7 days is. She sees the patch on his skin and remembers seeing something similar on the nurse who handed her the substance. The man's properties fall off the table, and when he bends down to pick them up, she sees his stitched back, and then notices his card with the number 207. Elizabeth immediately confirms that he's the nurse, so she asks him if he followed her, and he affirms, saying that he understands that she has started to feel lonely. Elizabeth denies it, but he continues, saying that she will soon experience an identity crisis. Spooked, she leaves the table after paying. But then the nurse asks her if Sue has started eating away at her, so she rushes out and accidentally bumps into Troy, who yells at her. Stunned that he cannot recognize her, Elizabeth stares at him for a long time, but he revs his bike and yells at her to move before driving off. When she gets home, she goes through her purse and sees the piece of paper with Fred's number. She recalls him calling her the most beautiful person, so she later dials his number, and he happily sets a dinner date at Luigi's at 8 p.m. Later that night, as she prepares to head to the venue, she sees Sue's stunning figure and tries to match her with makeup. After, she grabs her keys to head out of the apartment, but she sees Sue's billboard and angrily goes to the bathroom for another makeover. At one point, she gets fed up and ruins the makeup because she sees Sue watching her everywhere. She eventually stays at home and leaves Fred hanging. Angrily, Elizabeth decides to pay Sue back by eating a lot of cake and chicken to disfigure her body. The next time she switches, Sue goes to do her usual morning aerobics, and while at it, she feels an awkward bulge in her right cheek, so she excuses herself to check it out. After thorough examination, Sue pulls out a whole chicken thigh from her navel. Scared, she freaks out and then realizes it was a dream. She leaves the bathroom and walks to the living room and discovers a lot of devoured chicken and cake. Later, she phones the manufacturer of the substance, complaining to him that the balance isn't working. Sue blames Elizabeth for getting at her by sitting all day and snacking unlike her, who doesn't have time for herself. Again, the manufacturer reminds her that they are the same entity, and she should deal with it. When she gets to work, she doesn't find her crew, so a staff member informs her that Harvey wants to speak with her. Due to how serious he sounded, Sue timidly goes to his office, and Harvey strictly informs her that he can't keep her on the morning show any longer. Confused, she asks him why, but he breaks it to her that her ratings are through the roof and people love her a lot. So he has decided, along with other board members, to have her just on the New Year's Eve show, the network's biggest show. When she gets home, she takes a lot of stabilizer fluid, neglecting the rules. She doesn't switch back and continues for a long time. And by the time she finally switches, Elizabeth freaks out after seeing the state of her body. Half of her entire body has aged rapidly compared to the other, including her hair. She immediately phones the manufacturer and complains to him about what Sue has done. After listening to her, he informs her that she can put an end to the experience, but cannot reverse the changes. Elizabeth refuses, stating that she did it, and she says she needs to respect the balance. After the call, she hits her head several times, telling the voice inside her head to stop. One time while watching TV, she sees the present Harvey gave her, so she tries to leave the couch. But her left leg refuses to work, so she forcefully straightens it and picks up the present. Opening it, she realizes it's a French cuisine manual, so she goes through it and plans to prepare all the delicacies found in it. At that same time, a TV show where Sue is interviewed airs. While preparing the feasts, Elizabeth listens to the interview and hears Sue claiming her dream. Sue throws jabs at her, and Elizabeth gets mad and loses it. She crashes out badly, throwing eggs at the TV, using newspapers to block the window view of Sue's billboard, and yelling at the TV. When she gets into the bathroom, she goes through an identity crisis, and by the time she switches back to Sue, Sue freaks out after witnessing the mess Elizabeth had made out of the apartment. To get back at her, Sue then collects lots of stabilizer fluid that lasts her for 3 months. 3 months later, on the day before New Year's Eve, Sue runs out of stabilizer fluid and learns that she must swap to generate more fluid. When she switches back to Elizabeth, Elizabeth transforms into a deformed, near-hairless hunchback. Frustrated and tired of what Sue has turned her into, Elizabeth phones the manufacturer telling him that she wants to stop, so he sends her a termination package. The next day, she runs to the venue like a deranged hag, and then collects her package. After that, she drags Sue to the living room and injects her heart with the fluid. While at it, she changes her mind after realizing that Sue was about to achieve her dream that she's always wanted. So Elizabeth tries to wake Sue up, but she starts bleeding from her nose. Quickly, she rushes to get the switch valve, and after successfully initiating the transfer, Sue wakes up. This time around, the two of them are conscious. Shocked, Sue stares at Elizabeth, and after seeing the termination syringe, she attacks Elizabeth. In self-defense, Elizabeth hits her with a glass vase before running into the bathroom. As she tries to block the door, Sue breaks the lock after several attempts and smashes Elizabeth's head on the mirror several times. She then watches Elizabeth crawling towards the living room. and silently follows her. Sue kicks her opponent, crashing on the glass table, and then kicks her multiple times, killing her in the process. The moment Elizabeth dies, Sue feels a sharp pain, and then remembers that they are one. Later that night, as she prepares for New Year's Eve, her ears start ringing, so she goes to the bathroom and coughs severely, only to find out that one of her teeth has fallen. She starts crying as she sees herself pull out 2 other teeth. She then remembers the activator serum left at home, but one of the staff members cuts in, reminding her that she needs to be prepared. Quickly, Sue rinses off the blood and comes across Harvey in the walkway with a lot of shareholders. He introduces her to them and asks her to smile, so she covers up her dilemma by smiling with her mouth closed. After they leave, she quickly rushes to the elevator, but her nail breaks when she pushes the button. Her ear also falls off, but she struggles to hide her crisis, and she finally rushes out of the building and runs home. When she gets to her apartment, she dashes into the bathroom and takes the activator serum, injecting it into herself, breaking the cardinal rule not to, despite knowing it should be used once. Her cells start dividing, and her consciousness transfers into another being that came out of her spine. When she gets up, she sees the hideous creature she has become, and freaks out. Still wanting to be in the spotlight, Sue dresses up and prepares to go to the show. She then cuts a frame of Elizabeth and applies makeup on it before heading to the venue. She goes to the backstage, and the staff welcome her, clapping for her, but it turns out to be her imagination. She walks through the empty hallway and heads for the stage where everyone is all set, waiting for her to appear. Harvey, on the other hand, brags about her to the shareholders, and as the show gets on air, Sue walks up to the stage and takes the spotlight, revealing her hideous form. The ladies by her side try their best to stay calm, wondering what the actual F is going on, but suddenly the paper glued to her face falls off, revealing how grotesque looking she has become. She barfs a melon, and suddenly someone in the crowd yells at her. They call her a freak and frantically run around in horror, but she tells them not to be scared, calling herself Elizabeth and Sue. Some men charge at her and push her away, labeling her a monster. She sobs and tries to convince them that she's always been the same. But a man tears through her head, and another one erupts. Suddenly, her hands break, and she splurges blood all over the crowd. Everyone tries to get away from her, but they all end up soaked in the bloodbath. After the horrific incident, Sue flees her workplace, but her body breaks apart, shattering into multiple pieces. Her face then crawls out to her neglected star on the Walk of Fame, and smiles in hallucination before melting into a pulp. The next day, a floor scrubber cleans her blood from the star. The end. Thank you for sticking to the end of my video. Please do me the biggest favor by leaving a like, comment, and subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next video.